بسم الله الامنع الاقدس اللهم صل على نقطة البيان ومرآته ومحمد وآله والذين امنوا بهم بالعز والجلال والعن اللهم اعدائهم بالنقمة والضراء بكل حين وقبل حين وبعد حين. In the name of God, the most impregnable, the most holy. O God, blessings be upon the point of the Bayān, his mirror, and Muhammad and his family, and those who have believed in them. And curse, O God, their enemies with indignation and adversity in every moment, before every moment, and after every moment. The following is a response to the al-Habā'r, namely Mr. Afrooz Anvari and Kavian Milani, who sent messages to Kavian regarding the last couple of podcasts that I have made. I will quote them. They sent these messages on Telegram. I don't use Telegram. I use either Facebook or Twitter, or occasionally you can get me on some other social media networks. Anyway, Mr. Afrooz Anvari sent a message to our friend Kavian stating, and I quote, "An unfortunate attempt to demonize the Bahai Faith by a dwindling group of people who are holding to a notion that is not but a withering shrub in the deserts of ignorance. A perfect example of something called Strawmanning, a response misrepresentation that in fact assaults the very idea of an honest conversation. I do have my response and reasons prepared," unquote. Inshallah, you have your reasons prepared, and I will respond to your reasons and your responses. I mean, this is very typical kind of knee-jerkism that I am quite used to. Almost I have mapped it out, typecast the kind of knee-jerkism of the Baha'is in almost any context where they are criticized. Now, most interlocutors, especially including a lot of Muslim ones in Iran, are unprepared for the kind of knee-jerkism that these Baha'i cultists usually throw the way of their interlocutors. But there's something here I really want to address because I find it quite humorous, and that is, quote-unquote, he calls people who criticize the Baha'i Faith a dwindling group of people who are holding to a notion that is nothing but a withering shrub in the deserts of ignorance, blah, 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 unquote. These hyphen Baha'is are under the mistaken notion that their perception management and their, what my wife very aptly calls, occupation of the internet, unquote, constitutes reality. Now, the hyphen Baha'i organization would be a perfect case study for any sociologist or anthropologist wanting to do research on the internet and groups and organizations and what their self-perception on the internet may be. The fact of the matter is the following: the dwindling in terms of actual, real, concrete numbers of people enrolling in the Baha'i Faith, especially the hyphen Baha'i organization, is almost zero. There are rumors all over the place about Australia, my former home, that the Australian Baha'i community has had no enrollments, and especially in the Sydney metropolitan area, they have absolutely zero enrollments and have been in this situation of zero enrollments since pretty much the beginning of this decade. So, maybe Mr. Anvari has come to believe in his own hype and own propaganda, the internal propaganda of the hyphen Baha'i organization, but the truth of the matter is that the dwindlers are actually the hyphens themselves, and this can be very easily demonstrated. Not by eliciting any numbers from the hyphen Baha'is themselves, but doing actual research on the ground and talking to people. I still have quite a lot of undercover dissidents in Australia that talk to me, and the people who also then talk to Hassan Ershad and also Kavian, and on it goes. Now, the truth is that if it wasn't for the lobbying machinery, the anti-Iran lobby machinery of the United States and Great Britain and the State of Israel, right, that have been using the Bahai organization as one of their little spears against the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Baha'is would be completely, thoroughly, and categorically irrelevant as an organization. The Baha'is are useful to the Atlantean, or mainly the United States, Great Britain, and Israel powers in their ideological war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And that is the bottom line. And this is why allowances are made, these people are promoted, and elevated, etc., etc. But, if you took that away from these people, if their use-by date reached its term, the Bahai organization, you wouldn't even hear a peep from these people anymore. They are completely, they would become completely irrelevant. Now we can speculate as to what the usefulness of the Baha'is is to these organizations. I know exactly why that is. These people, as they say, as the proverb says in Persian, have been marinated in salt water. That for the day that these powers, the Western colonialist imperialist powers, actually do make the final assault on Iran. And do change the regime. They want to basically put these people into positions of power, very similarly to as they were under the Shah, when you had, for example, the deputy head of Sabak, Mr. Parviz Sabati, a Baha'i, a Sangyasari Baha'i. He denies it at the moment, and the Universal House of Justice and the Baha'i organs deny it, but there's no such thing as a non-Baha'i Sangyasari, as we all know. And on these examples go. General Ayadi, these people occupied all the levers of power, and people who have actually looked at the files of the Pahlavi era have reached some very interesting conclusions about one of the reasons why that revolution even came on, is because the Baha'is, through their greed, insatiable greed in that system, actually teetered that system to the point of collapse. So, inferentially, that states that the Islamic Revolution of 1979 was also the responsibility of the Baha'is for pushing Iran to that point of revolutionary explosion. Anyway, that's a whole another discussion that we can get into at another time. So as far as Mr. Afrooz Anvari's message goes, I would say, Afrooz Jan, stop taking your own hype so seriously. You guys are really nobodies. If the internet was taken away from you, and if your networks within the Anglo-American Zionist power structures was denied to you, your whole cult and global networks of your cult would collapse tomorrow. We all know that. You know that. So let's move on. The next person, Mr. Kavian Sadeqzadeh Milani, the same Kavian Sadeqzadeh Milani who penned a absolutely comical, hysterical paper during the closing years of the 90s, decade of the 90s, where he posits that the Universal House of Justice and the Baha'i administrative order are the pole, using the language of Sufism, the qutb of the universe. This whole paper, he explored the mystical dimensions of the Baha'i administrative order. I still have a copy of this. I will put this online and put a link below for anybody who wants to go check that paper out. Anywho, Mr. Kavian Milani states, I quote, he, meaning myself, really diminishes the Babi religion as Islam. The Bab is not at all teaching Islam. Sure, in the beginning, the language and concepts are Islamic and Shia, but the changes and eventually a new religion is formed. In my view, he's trying to really present the Bayani Faith as Islam and Shia, which it is not, unquote. Mr. Kavian Milani hasn't been really listening to the very nuanced argument that I have been putting forth. I have not denied that the Bab abrogated the Islamic Sharia and proclaimed a new creed, a new faith, a new dispensation, that of the Bayān. What I am introducing as an argument, and which is very evident in any of the texts of the Bab that one reads, is that the Bab is making almost an identical argument as the Quran itself makes about progressive revelation, that all religions, that all the religions in this Abrahamic genealogy of faiths and others that are not mentioned constitute an existential situation of Islam. okay, of submission to God. So that the name of Islam as a noun is used to identify the religion founded by the Prophet of Islam, peace and salutations be upon him and his family, okay, is also the same argument that the essence of the 7 letters, the Bab, is using in the Bayān. So the Bayān is Islam in that sense. This is a completely phenomenological argument that is absolutely evident, unequivocal within the Bayān itself and throughout all the writings of the primal point. Nobody can deny that. You know, all the salawat that one reads throughout even the later writings of the Bab, given to the Bayt and the Prophet of Islam, peace and salutations be upon them. You know, how does Mr. Kavian Milani explain that? The examples are many and manifold. The fact the letters of the living, that the first unity, constitute the return of the Prophet of Islam, Ali, Fatima, and all of the other Imams, plus the 4 gates, Abwab Arba'at. This is right in the first chapter of the Bayān itself. Okay, pretty much spells out that the way that these Baha'is are attempting to cast the religion of the Bayān is not what it is. And this is what the Bayanis have been saying consistently from the very beginning. Now, this all goes back to an element of the sanitization of Babism undertaken by Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri himself, that is attested in the final part of Agha Khan Kermani and Sheikh Ahmed al-Ruhi's Hasht Behesht. And this point is also underscored by other Bayani authors, is that Baha'u'llah introduced Islamophobia into his own creed of Baha'ism. And in particular, he introduced Islamophobia from the following angle. He introduced it from the angle of Shia phobia. So Baha'u'llah, for example, denies the physical existence of Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari, alayhi salam. He deprecates the 4 gates to the hidden Imam and calls them liars, and calls one of their enemies, al-Shalmaghani, he lauds Shalmaghani, etc. We see then in what Agha Khan Kermani and Sheikh Ahmed al-Ruhi underscore is that these Baha'is in Akkar, during the time of Baha'u'llah himself, these are some of the ashab, the companions of Baha'u'llah in Akkar, such as Zayn al-Muqarrabin and even Muhammad Ali al-Salmani, had at that point become Umaris. They were lauding Umar, Lanatullah alayh, and Abu Bakr, Lanatullah alayh, as these 2 individuals, the 2 foremost enemies of the Bayt in the early period, were being lauded by these Baha'is. Now this is in complete 180 degrees difference to anything that the primal point, the essence of the 7 letters taught. So obviously the diminishment is happening on the side of the Baha'is. And this also goes to the fact that the Baha'is, beginning with the time of Habāʼ al-Afaq, an epithet that Sufa Azal placed on Baha'u'llah, you know, the evil, hot, airy one, Habāʼ al-Afaq, that these people have been introducing Shia phobia, Islamophobia, outright hatred of Islam. I know this from my own upbringing within a Baha'i family, the level of incessant hatred and Islamophobia that is inculcated into Baha'i children from a young age. And on it goes. So, Mr. Kavian Milani, I think the diminishment is actually something else. The diminishment of the Bayān is something that begun under Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri Baha Habāʼ al-Afaq himself from the very, very beginning. The documentation is unequivocal. We have it in Hasht Behesht, every single last one of the Bayani authors, with the 2 brothers Qahir and Siraj, Mullah Ja'far al-Naraghi, etc. All of them have underscored this fact unequivocally that Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri had a problem, a real problem with Islam from the very beginning, and the whole Islamic civilization itself, and fundamentally with the figures of the Bayt, beginning with Ali alayhi salam. This is attested in all kinds of places, You also find it in his own writings occasionally, and they are copious in those various tablets that you Baha'is have under lock and key in your world center in Haifa, Zionistan. So this is the situation. There's no diminishment going on. What the Bayān is claiming is that it is a continuation of Islam. It is post-Islamic, that the Bayān represents the inner phenomena, the inner core of Islam is the Bayān. And that stems fundamentally from the Bab's own claim to being the Qa'im and Mahdi. And there are traditions within the Hadith, literature of Shia, that what the Bab did is precisely what the Mahdi and the Qa'im would do. Now, a lot of Muslims have a problem with that. Some of the Hozavi types would have a problem with that angle. Nevertheless, these are the texts. In terms of debating further and responding to the responses that and the threats that Mr. Afrooz Anvari has made, I respond in conclusion with the following. Anvari Jan, nat'u abna'ina wa abna'ikum wa nisa'ina wa nisa'ikum wa anfusina wa anfusikum thumma nabtahal فنجعل لعنة الله على الكاذبين. Come, let us call our sons and your sons, our women and your women, ourselves and yourselves, then supplicate earnestly together and invoke the curse of God upon the liars. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. No power and no strength is there save in God, the high, the mighty.